All right, thank you, Matthew. So we had a break last week, or I should say y'all had a break last week from me, but we had a break last week, and it was a good week with Brother Gabe. The week before, we had started off with kind of the introduction to this class on sins of the tongue, and we discussed in that first class, make sure I've got that. Taylor, could I get my slides, please, sir? Outstanding, thank you. We discussed in that first class that words are incredibly powerful, and they can build up, they can encourage, they can motivate, but they can also tear down and hurt and destroy and cause horrible, horrible scars. And the Bible reminds us of that in Proverbs, the 18th chapter. You'll remember we read there, life and death are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. And we also looked at Matthew 12 in the New Testament, where Jesus spoke very plainly about our use of words. He keeps a record of our words. Jesus says in Matthew 12, I tell you that on the day of judgment, people will have to account for every careless word they speak. He tells us every careless word there will be an accounting for in the day of judgment. Jesus was intimately aware of the devastating nature of our words. And we'll take a look later in this class of an interchange between Jesus and the Pharisees, which was quite tense. From our text in the third chapter of James, we spent a lot of time there 2 weeks ago, and it was clear that the Jewish Christians at that time were having a problem with their language. They were struggling with their language, and the pattern of their language really probably demonstrated a lack of faith on their part, a deeper spiritual problem that was in their lives. And then James warned about this earlier in his letter. If you look at James, the first chapter, in verse 26, he says, if anyone thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his heart, this person's religion is worthless. Controlling our tongues is actually proof of having this new nature. And so James challenges them. We looked extensively in James, the third chapter. James challenges them, and he also challenges each of us to live in accordance with that professed faith. What does that look like? How does that sound as a Christian? What does that look like, and what does that sound like? So that our tongues don't destroy our lives or the lives of others. So we looked at these 5 specific things that we gleaned out of James, the third chapter, verses 1 through 12, that to control the tongue, we have to recognize that God is going to judge our words. We just discussed that from Matthew 12. To control the tongue, we've got to recognize that it has a lot of power to direct other people's lives. It can drive change. It can direct lives. And to control the tongue, we've got to recognize just what is professed by the author in James, that it is very destructive. The tongue is extremely destructive, left to its own powers. And then point number 4, to control the tongue, we've got to recognize that it's humanly, that we can't do that on our own. We cannot control it on our own. We're going to fail miserably. So, to control the tongue, we've got to have consistency in how we do that. So in James, the first chapter, in verse 19, it says, know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger, for the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Let every person be slow to speak and slow to anger. In Proverbs, the 10th chapter, in verse 19, it says, when words abound, transgression is inevitable. Think about that, Proverbs. When words abound, transgression is inevitable. But the one who restrains his word is wise. So wise people restrain their words. Why? So they can listen better. So they can discern. They can make judgments. They can avoid miscommunication. Wise people restrain their words so they can better discern the motives behind spoken words, what they want to say as well. Are our motives selfish? Are they vindictive? Are they glorifying God? Are they selfless? And then wise people also restrain their words to discern what the best words are to use to produce the desired outcome. If we don't restrain our words, sin will abound, including miscommunication and even discord and disunity. So restraining our words, we talked at the very end of class, is that restraining our words is especially important in vulnerable situations. And I mentioned an acronym. Does anybody remember what that acronym is? I mentioned 2. But the first one was halt. Does anybody remember those situations when we kind of need to take a step back and be really, really careful at these times about what we say? When we're, what?
Hungry, angry, lonely, or tired.
Yeah, so half of us are probably a couple of those right now. So hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. When you're those certain situations, those vulnerable situations, you really have to be careful, particularly prone to things coming out of your mouth that you weren't ready for, that you weren't cautious of, that you weren't guarding of. So be very careful around those times. In Colossians, take a moment to look at Colossians, the fourth chapter. In Colossians, the fourth chapter, in verse 6, it says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God." I'm sorry, I was reading Philippians there. That's a great verse, but that's not the verse I was looking for. Colossians 4, verse 6. "Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person." Let your speech be gracious, seasoned with salt. What does grace mean? We all know that means unmerited favor. We're very familiar with that. So what that means is let your be gracious in our words, so they're always speaking loving things to people. We know people like that. We have got people like that in this congregation where every time you talk with them, they're saying something that's building you up, that's encouraging to you. And then oftentimes I find myself not doing that and thinking, man, I need to be better about that. I need to be more encouraged. I need to be more positive. I need to speak loving things to people, even when they don't deserve it. In Ephesians, the fourth chapter, if you go back just a couple of books there, Ephesians, the fourth chapter, and in verse 29, it reads, "Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as good for building up, as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear." We should constantly seek to shower people, to encourage people, to shower people with encouraging words, things that will build them up, things that will edify them. Proverbs 12:25 says, "Anxiety in a person's heart weighs him down, but an encouraging word brings him joy." And we all have experienced that in a time of trouble, in a time of distress, in a time of anxiety. Someone's kind or encouraging word makes such a difference to our attitudes, to our mental health, and to our well-being. So constantly looking for ways to bring joy to people in the things that we say to them, in the encouraging way that we can speak with them. We need to think before we speak. We already read that in James, the first chapter. Quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. We've got to guard. We've got to consciously guard against engaging the tongue without engaging the mind. So it's not uncommon. Have you ever heard talking about hijacking the hippocampus or hijacking the frontal lobe? It's where we just say something or we react in a certain way where we don't let our frontal lobe process things. And so we just kind of knee-jerk response. Something comes out of our mouth. We've got to be careful with that. I mentioned another tool to help evaluate whether you're about to say something that perhaps you shouldn't. Anybody remember what those 5 questions were? Think, yes. So, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Is it kind? I can remember the word think. So, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Is it kind? If what you're about to say doesn't pass the test, doesn't pass that simple test, you probably shouldn't be saying it. Think before we speak. So that's a brief review about what we covered 2 weeks ago. I wanted to kind of set the stage again for why we're even talking about these different sins of the tongue. We have to be in control. It's so important. So tonight we're going to discuss, there we go. I need to stay up on my own slides here. There we go. We are going to talk about lying, the specific sin of lying. You may have heard some similar surveys, but here's a survey that came out several years ago from the USA Today that reported that 91% of Americans lie regularly in one way or another. 91%. Obviously, there's going to be a sample bias. I wouldn't expect 91% of our group here in this building to lie regularly. However, 91% of Americans lie regularly in one way or another. 36% tell big, important lies, whatever that means. 86% regularly lie to their parents, 75% lie to their friends, 73% lie to their siblings, 69% lie to their spouses, 81% lie about their feelings, and 43% lie about their income. That's a lot of lying going on. According to a Psychology Today article, a survey of juniors and seniors from colleges around the country discovered that what percentage confessed to cheating while in high school? What do you think?
92.
70, between 50 and 92. 70% confessed to cheating while in high school. Of that same group that was polled, what percentage do you think regularly admitted to cheating in college? These are college students. Not all of them. 50%. Please don't let it be all of them. 50%. 50% regularly cheated while in college. So what I want you to do right now, just for a moment, before we get into the scripture here that I've listed, think for a moment, look inside yourself, and ask yourself, have you lied this week? Have you lied to your spouse? Have you lied to your boss? Have you lied to your coworker? Have you lied to a friend? Have you lied to your husband? Have you lied to anyone? And what does that mean to lie? Have you communicated something that is not true with the intent to deceive, even if it's slight? Have you communicated something that is not true with an intent to deceive? I read a story of one man who, you may have heard this story, scraped the side of a fancy car in a busy parking lot, right? When that happens, what should we do? If you don't know who that person is, you're leaving, what do? You leave them a note. Exactly right. So this man scraped the side of a real fancy car in a busy parking lot. There were lots of witnesses. So he got out of his car, he wrote a note, he put it on the windshield, and then he drove off. So later, when the owner of this fancy car returned and saw the scrape, he found the note. This is what it said. "I'm sorry I hit your car. All the people around me think I'm leaving you a note that includes my name, address, and phone number, but I'm not." That's the world we live in. That is the world we live in. So what does the Bible say about lying? Communicating something that's not true with the intent to deceive. Let's take a look at a few scriptures from the Old and New Testament. Before we turn to Proverbs 12, I'm going to back up from Proverbs 12 and just look at Proverbs 6. Proverbs 6 will come up a little bit later, but I think I prefer to start there at Proverbs 6. Proverbs 6, and look at verse 16. You will be very familiar with this verse, I'm sure. Proverbs 6 and verse 16 says, "There are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that make haste to run to evil, a false witness who breathes out lies, and one who sows discord among brothers." Several of those have to do with the tongue, but 2 of them specifically involve lying, things that God hates. Turn over a few chapters to Proverbs, the 12th chapter, and we'll look at verse 22. Proverbs 12 and 22. "Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who act faithfully are his delight." Probably 2 pages over, like it is in my Bible. Proverbs 14 and verse 5. "A faithful witness does not lie, but a false witness breathes out lies." Turn into the New Testament, 1 Peter, the 3rd chapter, and verse 10. And we're quoting here, he says, "Whoever desires to love life and see good days, let him keep his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit." And finally, a very scary verse from Revelation, the 21st chapter, and verse 8. Revelation 21 and verse 8 says, "But as for the cowardly, the faithless, the detestable, as for murderers, the sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars, their portion will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death." How does God feel about lying? It's pretty clear. It's an abomination to him. It's one of the things he hates the worst. He can't tolerate it. Why is it so common for people to lie or stretch the truth? Why is it so common? What's the motivation behind people lying?
Self-preservation.
Self-preservation, okay, explain that. What kind of situation would you describe that as?
You did something that you know you're going to get in trouble for, might lie about it, or just not mention it.
So protect yourself from harm or retribution. Okay. What else? Greed. Okay. What might that look like?
Well, lying on your taxes.
Lying on your taxes. Exactly. That's the first one that comes to mind, right? Not declaring something, not getting paid under the table when you know it's illegal. Things of that nature. That is greed. Lying. Somebody had. Yes, sir, Chris.
To get what you want.
To get what you want. What about those college students? What were they getting? Good grades, a degree, a good job, so that they could then lie about what they made. Yes. Protect someone's feelings. What might that look like?
Someone says, well, we're good at this, and you think maybe not, but still say yes.
Yeah, always a dangerous question. Isn't that a beautiful baby? That's a baby. That is a baby. That is a baby. Yeah, so to not hurt somebody's feelings, JD?
Line of thinking. I mean, you basically see it in all sorts of media, TV shows, movies. Like if there's like a birthday scene or something, you'll see like all sorts of people like lying about like appointments or where they are trying to keep this big secret, and it's portrayed in a pretty positive light. But at the same time, you are still lying flat out lying to someone's face.
What else does media do with lying? What is very common you see in TV shows? There's even an you may guys remember this. You remember the Andy Griffith episode where Opie is caught in a lie and Andy gets all over him, and then Opie catches Andy in a lie, but you remember that one? Right? How does the media portray lying? Do you guys even know what Andy Griffith is? You're smiling like you don't even know what Andy Griffith is. Okay.
Normal.
It's normal. And also, hey, if the outcome, yes, Stacy.
I don't know if this is what you were going for, but like categorizing them into little white lies or this harmless.
The big important lies like the survey did, yeah. Or it's harmless. How else? So that they will commonly kind of rationalize it.
To impress others.
Okay, so that could be a major motivator, right? To impress others, yep. So impressing others. They also might make it seem like the ends, okay, if the outcome was something good or was something desired, then it's okay that I lied to get that outcome because ultimately the end was good for everybody or for this person or that person. Yes, Kerwin?
Fear of consequences of what, if you answer, given the answer that given, you fear the consequences that come.
So punishment, self-preservation, something like that. Yes?
When Peter was asked, do you know Jesus? He said, the fear of the consequence of what would happen.
And that's a good example of the lie kind of building on itself, where at the very end, the last time, what did he do? He didn't just lie, he cursed and lied.
Well, I was thinking the same thing some of it's not just the thing, like self-preservation, or you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, it's the fear in your own mind that it's going to happen. You build it up in your own mind, you say, hey, you don't know what's going to happen, but you're afraid, and that's what causes you to do it, or that's where you go with it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with all this. Again, kind of that self-preservation or fear mode. We'll lie to fit in socially, peer pressure, lie to maintain privacy. Some people will lie about their age or relationship status, variety of different things. But it's extremely common for a variety of reasons. Any other reasons that we can think of? Any other the reasons that you want to throw out there? It's just very, very common. I want you to take a look at John 8. This is just a really fascinating text to me. John 8 really starts in John 7. The whole scene starts in John 7. And you'll remember in John 7, pretty early or midway through Jesus' ministry here, and he's going from Galilee up to Judea. At the time he's in Galilee and his brothers are there, and they're the Feast of Booths is about to start in Jerusalem, and his brothers are really kind of poking at him, and they're needling him, And they're they don't believe. And it talks about there in chapter 7 that they doubt him. And so they're kind of just egging him on. And what they're egging him on is they're saying, hey, you need to go big. You need to go public. If you're the Messiah, you need to come to Jerusalem and tell your people, right? Not because they believe, because they actually disbelieved. So they're kind of needling him. Jesus winds up going to Jerusalem during the Feast of Booths, and it mentions that the Jews at that time were already seeking to kill him. And these interactions with the Pharisees are incredibly tense. It's a scene that if you read through this kind of, from chapter 7 on through the end of chapter 8, it's a scene that I would really like to see done like in a Murder, She Wrote, what's that Andy Griffith guy was also an attorney, Matlock, right? In a courtroom. And you would have this set up in a courtroom situation. You have the Pharisees here, and you have Jesus here, and they're kind of throwing questions back and forth and cross-examining each other. And it's incredibly dramatic when you read it and you realize what kind of language they're using and how Jesus is pointing them out and how the Pharisees are accusing him of lying and Jesus is punching back at him. It is tense. And Jesus is, in chapter 8, Jesus has come to the temple in the morning. And lots of people have come to hear him. And the reason this has happened is that halfway through the Feast of Booths, in the middle, it says in verse 14, chapter 7, in the middle of the feast, Jesus goes up and begins teaching. At the end of this, on the last day of the feast, Jesus stands up and cries out, if anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink. So he's in the middle of the temple at the last day of the feast, and he stands up and he just says this out loud to everybody who's there that can hear him. And in chapter 8 then, right after that occurs, the next morning he comes to the temple. All these people are here, including the scribes and Pharisees. And then early in chapter 8, the Pharisees accuse Jesus of lying. Look at verse 13. Verse 12, again Jesus spoke to them saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. So the Pharisees said to him, you are bearing witness about yourself. Your testimony is not true. All right, this is in the temple. There's like lots of people around. The Pharisees like, you are a liar. Your testimony is not true. In verse 38 and they go back and forth a little bit. And then in verse 38, Jesus kind of sets a trap for him. It's pretty cool what he says. Chapter 8, verse 38, he says, I speak of what I have seen with my father, and you do what you have heard from your father. What do the Jews think he's talking about? Abraham. Right? So it's just kind of like he just tossed it out there and they just grabbed the hook and then here they go. So he says, I'm doing what my father said and you do what you have heard from your father. Look at verse 39. They answered him, Abraham is our father. Jesus said to them, if you were Abraham's children, you would be doing the works Abraham did. But now you seek to kill me, a man who has told you the truth that I heard from God. This is not what Abraham did. You are doing the works your father did. Okay, he said, Abraham's not our father. You're doing the works of our father. What are you talking about? Can you just see this tension going back and forth? You're a liar. No, you're not doing what the father said. You're not doing what your father. You're doing the works your father did. They said to him, we were not born of sexual immorality. All right? Getting Jesus because of his mother Mary. We were not born of sexual immorality. We have one Father, even God. Jesus said to them, if God were your father, you would love me, for I came from God, and I am here. I came not of my own accord, but he sent me. Why do you not understand what I say? Can't you just see him saying that? Why don't you understand what I'm saying? It's because you cannot bear to hear my word. And here we go. You are of your father, the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires. What must they have felt? What must they have looked like when he calls the devil their father? Your will is to do your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, and does not stand in the truth because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. It goes on, and Jesus hits him kind of with body blow after body blow in verse 45. He says, because I tell the truth, you do not believe me. If I tell the truth, why don't you believe me? Whoever is of God hears the words of God. The reason why you do not hear them is that you are not of God. One of the key points that Jesus makes is that they're doing the will of their father, Satan. And what does he describe Satan's characteristics as? A murderer and a liar. A murderer and a liar, and the father of all lies. He's a murderer, he's a liar, and he's the source. He's the father of all lies. Why is that important to know? Why is it important to know that Satan is the father of all lies? How does that help us to not tell a lie? JD?
I mean, with Satan himself being the father of all lies, and every lie spoken is really, in his service, the importance of knowing that, and how that can motivate us to tell the truth is that we all know where Satan is and where his followers and sons and daughters wind up. So
That's told us in Revelation 21 for sure. We know where they're winding up. Ben and then Curran.
One of my first thoughts is to make us feel really nasty to think, well, I'm going to submit to the will of Satan more than the will of God. And no matter how appealing the lie may be, or how it may make us feel, or we may think it could soothe an issue or make things better, knowing that he's the father of all lies, and now knowing that I'm going to go down that path that he wants me to go down, nothing good, no matter how good it may look or sound, is actually going to come from it.
The great deceiver from Genesis 3, right? The great deceiver. If you know that what you're about to say or what you have said makes you like the Pharisees, you're doing the works of your father, not Father God, your father Satan. Do you think that might have an impact on us? I think it does on me. I don't want to do his will. I want to do my Father's will in heaven. Kerwin.
Well, you touched on it a little bit in Genesis, what happened in Genesis, and when Satan lied to Adam and Eve and tell them they will surely not die. Well, guess what happened? They died. So from the beginning, he's been lying. Until now, he's still even using God's word to lie to people. And a lot of people will be facing hell because he keeps on lying.
He truly is the great deceiver. If you look at those scriptures there in Genesis 3rd chapter, it says the serpent was more crafty than any other beast of the field. Look at, he said to the woman, did God actually say you shall not eat of any tree in the garden? See, he's a little deceptive, kind of a little tossing in a little doubt. Did he say not to eat of any tree? The woman said to the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. And then the serpent lies. But the serpent said to the woman, you will not surely die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. He lied. He deceived. He lied. She fell for it, convinced her husband. And that's the start of sin in the world, from a lie. That's what started it, a lie. Yes, sir.
Knowing the weapons and tactics of your enemy gives you strength.
I love that.
And Eve, even though she didn't tell the lie, she was the victim of that lie. It says that she was deceived. Yet that still wasn't an excuse. She still got her punishment. So knowing that lies are going to come, that can lead you to sin and become the victim of Satan's lies. Don't be deceived when those lies do come. You know that he's going to lie.
That is his MO, right? That's his modus operandi. That he is going to lie and he's going to deceive you and he's going to try and trick you. You've got to be on guard for that. Not just telling lies on our own, but also be wary of the lies that are being told to us by the world, trying to convince us that it's okay. It's just a little white lie. It's not going to hurt anybody. It's just to get ahead a little bit. Oh, you don't want to get in trouble by your parents. It's okay. So I think it's interesting when you look at this subject because you're going to get questions. If you haven't gotten questions before, you're going to get questions about this, about lying that shows up in the Bible. Take a look at Joshua, the 2nd chapter. In Joshua 2, Israel's about to cross the Jordan, but they haven't yet. And so Joshua sends 2 men secretly as spies, and they head for Jericho. And they find a place, they hide with the Rahab, the prostitute, and they lodge there. And then what happens there? It was told to the king of Jericho, "Behold, men of Israel have come here tonight to search out the land." Then the king of Jericho sent to Rahab, saying, "Bring out the men who have come to you, who entered your house, for they have come to search out all the land." But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. And she said, "True, the men came to me, but I did not know where they were from. And when the gate was about to be closed at dark, the men went out. I do not know where the men went. Pursue them quickly, for you will overtake them." But she had brought them up to the roof and hid them with the stalks of flax that she had laid in order on the roof. So the men pursued after them on the way to the Jordan as far as the fords, and the gate was shut as soon as the pursuers had gone out. Before I ask you this question, take a look at James, the 2nd chapter. James, the 2nd chapter, in verse 24. You see that a person is justified by works and not by faith alone. And in the same way, was not also Rahab the prostitute justified by works when she received the messengers and sent them out by another way? What is Rahab being praised for exactly?
Her action.
Her action, which was
Send the spies.
sending the spies out another way. But answer me truthfully, what else did she do in Joshua, the 2nd chapter?
She was deceptive.
She was deceptive. We would call that a lie. Was that what she was praised for? She was not praised for that. She knew the Israelites were the children of God, and that God was the one true God. If you go back to verse 11 of Joshua 2, "For the Lord your God, he is God in the heavens above and on the earth beneath." She believed in God. She knew what was coming. Did she know the law of Moses? No. Did she need to lie? I want you to think about this. What would have happened to the spies if she had told the truth?
God would have saved them from on the way.
We don't know. We don't know what would happen. And we're going to build on what you just said there. What you're describing is, maybe the Star Wars moment. These are not the droids you're looking for, right? That's a great scene, by the way, isn't it? Would God's plan have ultimately been successful if Rahab had chose not to lie? Yes. That's what faith brings us. What did Abraham believe about Isaac if he had sacrificed him on Mount Moriah? If it took raising him from the dead, he trusted what God said. "Through Isaac shall your offspring be named." We don't know. Maybe they would have killed the spies. But ultimately, you have to believe that God's plan was going to be successful. So I ask again, Rahab was praised for her faith, for sending the spies out another direction. But did she have to lie? She did not. 1 Samuel, the 20th chapter. We're not going to read all of this. But David coaches Jonathan to lie to his father, King Saul. Do you remember that story? He's got this archer. Jonathan's out there with the bow and arrows, and Saul and Jonathan meet in the field. And David says, "Hey, tell your dad that I'm not showing up at the feast because my brothers wanted to see me. There's a feast. They're having a feast in Bethlehem, and they wanted me to come there." And then David stays in the field for 3 days. Did David lie? We have to be honest with ourselves here, folks. Did David lie? Yes. Did he encourage Jonathan to lie? Yes, he did. What would have happened differently had Jonathan just told his dad, instead of, hey, David wants to go down to Bethlehem to hang out at a festival because his brothers want to see him? What if Jonathan had said, David thinks you're trying to kill him? If you look at 1 Samuel 20 and you go to verses 30 through 34, I think it would have looked pretty similar to what actually happened without the lie. What happened? King Saul tried to kill his son, Jonathan. He threw a spear at him. Did David and Jonathan have to have that complicated lie to accomplish what David needed? They did not. I think about the scenes that we just read about in John 7 and 8. The Pharisees were actively seeking to kill Jesus. They'd even sent men out to arrest him. But what does it say in the text? It wasn't the right time. So in 3 different places, chapter 7 verse 30, chapter 8 verse 20, chapter 8 verse 59, it says Jesus escaped death because it wasn't the right time. Was God's plan ultimately going to be successful? It is going to be successful. It was successful. Jesus didn't need to lie about that. You will hear actually people talking about John. Actually, go there for just for a moment. John 7. Have you ever heard anyone complain about this, or have you ever been troubled about the dialogue between Jesus and his brothers, where Jesus and whether or not Jesus lied to his brothers? Look at John 7, verses 8 through 10. His brothers, again, are kind of needling him. No one works they're saying to him, this is in verse 4, no one works in secret if he seeks to be known openly. If you do these things, show yourself to the world. Be public about it. Go public, go big. Show yourself to the world. For not even his brothers believed in him. Jesus said, my time has not yet come, but your time is always here. The works are evil. You go up to the feast. I am not going up to this feast, for my time is not yet fully come. After saying this, he remained in Galilee. But after his brothers had gone up to the feast, then he also went up, not publicly, but in private. Did Jesus lie?
That was according to his own time schedule.
He did not lie. What he says there, they're telling him, hey, go up and be publicly, go up and show yourself and expose yourself to, I am here, this big public announcement, to be known openly. Leave here so that your disciples may also see all the works that you're doing. It wasn't his time yet. He did go up, but not publicly in that big show. He went privately. What is the theme that I'm trying to get out here about God's plans? Is God going to accomplish his goals? Does he need us to lie about it in order to get it done? He does not. He didn't in the Old Testament with Rahab. He didn't with David and Jonathan. He doesn't with us. If you look at the other scriptures there, I have asterisks next to. You'll remember the story in Daniel 3. The story there is about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. My dad used to tell this story. There's a preacher who could never remember those names, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And so he pinned it to the inside of his coat pocket. But when he got up at the podium for church, he actually lifted the other one, Hart, Schaffner, and Marx. Okay. The story here is not that they couldn't pronounce the name, but Nebuchadnezzar is really, really irritated that they won't bow down to his golden image in verse 15 of Daniel, the 3rd chapter. So the boys answer in Daniel 3 and in verse 16 through 18. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you on this matter. If this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. We're not going to do it. We don't need to answer you. And even if God does not deliver us from you, we will not serve gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Could they have lied? Okay, we'll give in. We'll worship him. We'll bow down. falsely swearing, which we're not even going to get to tonight. The end doesn't justify the means, and the threat of bad consequences cannot dictate our actions or allow us to excuse lies of any kind.
That's the devil's thread there.
It is.
We're all faced with that, and we make this hypothetical as if that's the only way out for us to tell a lie. And that is the devil's thread.
Our sinning or making this decision is the only way God's going to be able to accomplish his plan. It is not true. Ben?
So, a couple of thoughts here. One, was David lying when he was foaming at the mouth, pretending like he was foaming at the mouth and was mad to get out of that situation?
Was that deceptive?
Deceptive. So,
Was it?
yeah.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so here's my next question. With the Florida State shooting on campus, there was a girl who just laid there pretending that she was dead. So does that fall into deceit? Because she's trying to preserve her life. This gunman is reloading right there.
Yeah. I don't think the gunman needs to know if she's alive or dead. But, yeah, you could take this very, very far into those type of realms where, do I need to stand up and say, hey, you didn't shoot me enough? Go ahead. Is that what you want her to do? Joanne?
Mordecai told Esther, don't think that you'll escape, because if you keep silent, you may die, but deliverance and relief will come from another place. He said, you can either do it or God will accomplish it another way. And the same thing with Moses when he struck the rock the second time. God told him to speak to the rock. He did the wrong action, but God's plan was still put in place. He still gave the people water, even though Moses sinned in the process.
In Acts, the 4th chapter, Peter and John are arrested for teaching the gospel. Remember that? Very early in the church history. They're arrested for teaching the gospel, and the council says, hey, you got to stop teaching. You got to stop proclaiming. And in verse 16 through 20, what do they say? Okay. And then, or they lie about it. No, I'm not going to teach anymore. But we just got to get out of this bad scene. No. They said, essentially, you got to do what you got to do. For us, we don't have an option. We got to speak what we've seen and heard. They didn't lie, even to escape physical injury or death. And it wasn't too much later on that another apostle was actually killed by Herod, obviously James, the brother of John. So what's the point to this whole discussion? Is it ever okay to lie? When you connect this back to knowing who is the father of all lies? The devil. Can God lie? How does God feel about lying? Any lie. It's an abomination. Where are those liars going to end up? Not where any of us want to end up. Connect those thoughts. Is it ever okay to lie? It is not. In Ephesians, the 4th chapter, in verse 25, the word Paul uses there, actually in verse 22, for putting away is the same word he used in verse 22, I should say, for putting off the old man, stripping off the filthy, stained, stinking clothes. Lying is one of those stains on the old man. It's something we've got to get rid of. We can no longer lie. Lying, in Ephesians 4, going on in verse 25, it talks about one of the reasons Paul gives for not lying is because we're all members of one another. We can't lie against each other. We can't lie to each other. We're all members of one another. I'm going to go, I have 2 minutes left. Yes?
Sorry, I'm watching the late, so I don't know if you said this. For me, I always thought of Proverbs 3:5. I know chapter 3 talks about lying, but trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding. A lot of times I think things will turn out a certain way, and I know how to better do it. Maybe that is a temptation to lie. I don't know. You may have already.
No, that's, yeah.
For me, it's just whether you trust God or not. You're thinking about that verse.
Absolutely goes to that. Thank you for that. The reality is that it's very easy to lie. We may find ourselves having lied before, lying again. We may be chronic liars. It may become easier for us. Whatever the case is, there's a good chance if you're sitting in this building, you've lied. Once you understand that, we have to get this, we have to guard ourselves from this. if you have lied, you got to ask for forgiveness for it. You got to ask, you got to get on your knees and pray for the strength and the ability to speak only the truth. You spend a lot of time kneeling, you're probably going to do less lying. You have to confess, you got to pray, you got to commit yourself. We have to commit ourselves to speaking the truth and only the truth. It is an act of will, constant watchfulness, and discipline. But there is no really other way to stop lying except for tying your lips together and chopping off your hands so you can't type, I guess. But the Word convicts us. We have to confess and we have to repent of that. Pray to God for forgiveness. We have to pray for the strength to overcome it. And we have to determine in our hearts and in our minds that we are not going to lie at all, ever, under any circumstance, to preserve our lives, to preserve our jobs, whatever it is, we are going to speak the truth. Here's our prayer prompt for the week. Colossians 3, verses 9 and 10. Do not lie to one another, seeing that you have put off the old self with its practices and have put on the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge after the image of its creator. Put on the image of your Father, the Father in heaven. Don't be deceived and take on the wiles and the actions and the techniques that Satan wants us to. Thank you guys for your attention tonight.